All right. Well, it is a minute past the hour, and true to form, we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Thank you for all of you that are joining us today from wherever it is that you're joining from. My name is Guillaume. I'm going to be your facilitator for today's very special webinar with our friends at Constellation Research. And today's topic, loud and clear, reimagining the contact center in the age of AI and voice. And we have two special guests who are really going to lead today's back and forth discussion. So this is going to be a little bit different than what we've done in the past. There will be no demonstration. This is really going to be more about the thought-provoking discussion around the topic of contact center and voice AI. And to facilitate that conversation, they'll be jumping on, sharing their camera here shortly, are none other than Dennis Seynhaeve, our CEO here at 3CLogic, as well as Liz Miller, the Vice President and Principal Analyst here at Constellation Research. Liz, thanks for joining. Dennis?
My gosh, thanks for having me. Are we ready for this? Are we? Ooh, gee, do you know what you've unleashed here? Are we ready?
I do, but our audience may not. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you guys go ahead and take the ball. And for those of you online, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll go ahead and monitor those on behalf of Liz and Dennis. And depending on where the conversation leads, whether during or perhaps towards the end, we'll try and tackle those as well. So with that, Liz and Dennis, I leave you two to it.
Oh boy, it kind of felt like a threat. I don't know. I don't know, Dennis. But let's have some fun because there's plenty of fun to be had in this space, right?
Well, it's been an interesting space. And every week, you just wonder what you're gonna wear.
It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. But you know what? There are so many things changing, yet so many things seem to stay the same. I feel like ever since you and I have known each other, and I'm going to just go ahead and venture to guess that in your career, certainly in service and in contact center and in voice and in conversation, I'm going to say that, I still have battle scars from implementing certain applications that rhyme with Shmana. So some things change, but some things stay the same. So listen, I'm going to start by, I'm going to be selfish, webinar audience. I'm sorry for doing this. G just said, ask questions, but this is what happens when you invite me to these things. I get greedy and I take the first question. So I'm going to ask you.
You go.
When you look at the state of today's contact center, yes, so much has changed, but we still have certain issues. Like we still have data issues. We still have channel issues. We still seem to have this never ending ongoing debate about channels. But then something comes up and we all sit back and remember that, oh yeah, voice is still important. Things still happen. So sure I'm going to ask you this. When you look out at today's contact center, what are the first couple of things that jump out at you? Like, what do you see? What's the state out there?
Well, as we say in French, ça change, moins ça change. Yeah, I mean, you would think that it's changing, but it's
bust out French on me.
But it is not changing that fast. There's a lot of excitement, but people actually move slowly, and most of our customers are enterprise customers, and the first thing that happened with change is that they're deer in headlights. They don't know what to do, and then when they figure out what they would like to do, then they need to find a budget for it, and so on. So it takes a while for those aircraft carrier to start turning, but eventually they do. And in this case, what we're seeing is that I don't think, I guess we'll agree at least on this one. We've never seen anything move this fast in the industry. And
with AI, yeah.
So we go from deer in headlights to God, we need to do something now because otherwise we're going to be late. We're going to get hurt. So that's what I'm seeing as an underlying waves.
It's interesting that you say that because I totally agree with you. There's this weird swirl that's happening. It's like when you get caught, like the slow moving barge has gotten caught in one of those like water funnels that's pulling everything down the drain, right? At least that's how it feels. And I think we got really excited when we heard about generative AI, because let's also be very honest about something. I want to give the contact center credit for something. And I know that's not something that a lot of people love doing. I think a lot of times when we talk about the contact center and we hear people talk about contact center, it's like, oh my gosh, they're spending so much money. Like, let's go beat them some more. Like, it's a weird spot. Like, it's very similar to being a marketer, because so in my own personal background, I've been a marketer for years, but I've also stood up contact centers, and I've been that person who has had to go in and try to figure out, okay, how do we pull this up into not only brand messaging, but how do we have happy people there? Like, what's going on over there? Why is everyone kind of unhappy a lot of the times? It's because both marketers and service leaders are on this weird apology tour. Right? Like, it's this weird state of being where we're constantly asked to apologize for the good things we've done. Like, you went and spent all that money on advertising and brand, and now everyone knows who we are, but you spent all that money. And you're like, I'm so sorry. Like, you're the CMO and you're like, I'm so sorry that I did all that good stuff, and now everyone knows our name, right? Same thing in the contact center. Like, you trained all of those people to answer all those questions, and our customers love us now. And our customers think that we are so empathetic and we hear everything they say. Why'd they spend so much time on the phone? And the experience leader has to go in there and be like, I'm so sorry that our people are really good at their jobs. It's a really weird apology tour. But we've been working with AI for a really long time. It's not new in the contact center. Generative AI is new. Leveraging large language models is new. And I think a lot of the innovations that we have in voice are new. But we haven't been scared of AI in a really long time. I think what we've been trained to believe is that AI is going to come and take all of our jobs, right? And so it's like this big, scary beast that walks in. But for a lot of your customers, AI has been fundamental to how they get to the intelligence about customer voice. Like, it's actually brought that understanding and that knowledge front and center in a way that has really changed the way that they can look at how data and how voice is managed and then distributed back across the enterprise. So I think part of the swirl is exactly what you said, which is like the figment of change, right? Like, it's the specter of change, and this is all going to be really hard. But I think the contact center is probably the first place in the enterprise that's actually really ready for this change and actually pretty excited about it, because we know who else knows the customer and the channels better.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but to a point only, because I just came back from visiting our team in India, and I tell you, last time I was there, I'm not proud of it. It was 5 months ago. 5 months ago. So woo, I should go there more often. But man, the changes. 5 months ago, they were starting to a little bit like everybody else. What do we do with this? So we had POCs, we had trials, we had things of that nature. This time around, it was all about showing me the good stuff that they have done. And I guess what? I mean,
they're like bragging. That's awesome.
Yeah, they were absolutely bragging about, hey, and I mean, and we discovered that too, or we did this and we did that, and we we can see and finally measure some really changes thanks to AI. And I think that the same thing is happening. So I think it's going to be everywhere in the enterprise. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to take over, but it's going to be everywhere. You need to consider it everywhere, from marketing.
But I got to tell you, you know what I love about your story? Okay, yes, you have to go back to India more often. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. But what I love about that story is that everyone's showing you everything they learned, right? Everyone's coming and being like, oh, and then when we did this, we actually got to this, and we got this, and then we knew we needed to change this. One of the unlocks that we've seen across the industry and across the enterprise is that AI is giving not just developers, but that citizen developer, the person that's just sitting at their desk trying to get something done, it's given them the opportunity to interrogate data and ask questions differently without getting punished. Like, think about 3 years ago. If an analyst were to ask a question and shift a data table around to see if we moved this audience or if we changed this workflow, what would happen? It could, on some systems, break everything downstream because you moved this. Well, there were 17 other workflows that were dependent on that, and you didn't know about it. You broke the whole system. There was a punishment there. But I think in today's ecosystem of connected ecosystem, great architectures, cloud-based visibility, platform of platforms, and we're going to get there in a second, but and AI, you can now experiment. You can learn that next step and be like, oh, I'm going to tweak this. I'm going to facilitate minor change over here and not have everything break downstream.
Yeah.
I can experiment and find things that are new, and people are getting excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big difference from anything else I can remember. And then people feel like the fear is going away, and they're looking at the capabilities and how it's going to help them in their job, and hopefully how it's going to help us as an enterprise. But I think that the customers are at the same level, and
Interesting.
we actually had to rein them in, some of them, because people get
Over too much. Yeah.
overly excited, and hopefully they see us at the expert, and they'll little help us so that they don't go on the limb, because too much excitement could create what you just and all of a sudden break something, or I mean, let's take one step back. What do we do in call center? We are more and more the face of the enterprise. So, and that face now is, very often a non-human, because the IVR is being replaced, by a conversational AI, which is great. Actually, I think 3 years from now, it won't be acceptable to have the TMF anymore. But anyway, that may be a different story.
There's a bold prediction. I like it. We need to have like a little sign or like sirens going here for everyone on the webinar.
Your customers are going to expect that kind of experience. Okay.
Because you know what no one wants to hear? Dennis, I'm not going to lie to you. As a customer, if I take my analyst and my contact center hat off for a second, and I just remember that I'm a customer, when was the last time you picked up a phone and thought, gosh, I hope someone tells me all the numbers that I could push for the department that I'm at? God, I hope this happens. Please tell me to push 3 to actually get to accounting. Said no one ever. Like, no one's sitting there like, oh, let this be a recording.
And the best sentence is, you need to listen to this because our menu has changed.
Our menu has changed. Here's my other favorite one. Here's my other favorite. And folks in the audience who are watching this, go ahead and feel free to put your favorite one in, because we will shout that out. But like, my other favorite one is the one that hasn't been updated in 3 years. And so it's reminding you to stay 6 feet apart from each other due to COVID regulations. And you're like,
really?
That can change, everyone. Like, you could go back and re-record that if you wanted to. But it's these funny things. It's these funny traps that we get set into. And the reality is, I think a lot of times in our industry, we have people. Here's the great thing. We have people who are so good at their jobs. They're moving up, and they're moving up quickly. And they're finding really strategic places to be in that really change the trajectory of their business. And I love seeing people from contact center rise up into those strategic management roles. It is absolutely fantastic to see. And I am the biggest cheerleader for that happening. But it also leaves that gap of the person who's like, oh, that recording must update. Like, you've got to tell it to update. You have to tell it COVID isn't doing 6 feet distancing anymore. It's okay.
Well, that might be happening in some companies because there's still that disconnect between silos, right? So everything that's in telephony, call center, is in one silo, and the person in charge of CX or the CRM is a different silo, and then you have the HR silo and whatever, and they don't talk to each other, or maybe they send that email to the telephony guy, say, hey, you need to change that message. And
that guy's like, not my job.
Well, to say that, it's not a priority. There's an outage. There's this, there's that. So one of the things that is really changing now, with for call center, I believe, is that we're finally understood as the engagement layer. So we're not
part of that engagement layer. Absolutely.
Silo. We're a layer, and that changes everything, because now it's okay, and it's actually best practice to connect that layer, not just to the CRM, but to your IT, to your HR, to your finances. And that's where, we have this great relationship with our service now. That's where all the glue comes together. And we can be on the front end, we can bring the engagement and then go through the workflows. And I know you want to talk about data, but you know, with
I
the
really
data
do,
layer,
Dennis. I do, but let me ask you this first before I get real nerdy and start talking about data and workflows and who's doing next into service now. We're gonna talk about it. I'm just warning you, but I'm gonna talk about something else before we get there. Okay, because we've been talking about change and kind of like where contact center is evolving, but there's been an interesting exercise that's been happening across the market of what would happen if you just took a blank piece of paper and at the executive level, you're a CEO, right? So you can imagine having this conversation with your leadership team of being in a brand and saying, okay, let's take all the preconceived notions about the contact center. Telephony is hard. Omnichannel is impossible. Can't get data. Voice doesn't integrate. I can't get transcriptions, quality, regulation, all the things that over the past decade have been realities. Some of them have been solved, but change is hard. What if we took all that away and we just started with a blank piece of paper and reimagined what the contact center should be for the enterprise and how that technology then comes together? Where would you start on that blank piece of paper?
I would start from stopping to do things that are done today. Like you just mentioned omnichannel. I would pretend that omnichannel has been used mostly to make sure that people don't get to an agent. That's it. That's job number one. Not job number one is just make sure that you're not going to be connected to an agent. It's just I have just a memory that comes from a situations where I was so unhappy with the chat that I had with a vendor that I won't name, that I decided I need to call. Well, you couldn't find a number on their website anywhere.
Nowhere.
You couldn't call these people. I had to Google the company, and then I found the customer service
their phone number.
I found a number on Google, and then I was connected to some call center in India, mostly, that knew nothing about anything. It was the worst.
And it's like the poor person, it's not their fault. Like they're just...
Yeah. But the truth is that they were trying everything they could to make sure you would not talk to an agent. Yeah. And so if you were to change something, it's to say, now this is voice first, because voice works. If you add voice AI, to your existing voice call center, it's just, I mean, it's on steroid all of a sudden.
Yeah,
everything is possible. And now you're going to do voice first, and maybe, I mean, for some use cases, I'll give you, and I'll name the vendor because you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Comcast. Comcast.
You stop it now.
One of the vendors that we love to hate. I'm gonna advertise for Comcast for a minute. My router or something, my internet wasn't working. And it was just a week ago. That's why it's top of mind. And so I went on their website, I went on the chat. But the beauty of their chat is that they can actually do something. They can actually, they can actually connect to your router and figure out, you know what, Dennis? Or you think it's your router? We'll have to send you to someone. Case closed. Done. So chat can work. I'm not doing chat, but I think that voice is definitely going to be number one.
You know, I'm gonna say something about Comcast that I love. I actually love that you brought them up, right? Because if you were to say to me 10 years ago, let's talk about a phenomenal customer experience, we're going to talk about Comcast. And then you and I would have devolved into a conversation about, is it Comcast or is it Xfinity? Remember what they would do, that whole brand, because they diversified so much on the Comcast business side and the corporate side, they had to create this other entity for their comm stuff, right? And Xfinity was like, and then we're going to farm out all of our support and help. And so if you actually wanted to get to a technician, that went through 3 other different types of platforms and 17 other chats. And then good luck getting a phone number. You were going to be able to go into a store. It would take less time to get in your car, drive to your local Xfinity storefront, stand in line with your router and be like, do this, fix this right now, right? It would have taken less time to do that than to sit on the phone or do anything. But something interesting happened at the corporate level of Xfinity and Comcast, which was they went and experienced their own experience. And they realized just how much they were putting their customers through because they couldn't figure out, like, we keep trying to shift this NPS score. We keep trying to, like, they went through the whole traditional things that you do when you realize people hate you. Like, they went through that whole experience engagement of, we're going to look at our NPS and we're going to do this. Would you recommend us to a friend? And everyone's like, no, like, is there a hell no option? Like, that's where I'm going. And I think that what happens, the beautiful thing that happens when your senior most leadership at the very top of your enterprise takes the time to remember that they know what it feels like to be a customer, and
Right.
they then subject themselves to the experience that their operational processes put customers through. A light bulb goes off. That becomes the unlock where they're like, oh, okay. So in order to drop call time handling, a single isolated metric that they can say drove $1 in savings, we put through people through this whole awful experience that actually cost us $100 because that customer refuses to upgrade their package now because they hate us. So to save $1, we spent $100. Like, they start to connect the dots of why of the contact center being out front and being seen as a strategic entity, not an operational cost, but being seen as part of the totality of an experience strategy. It starts to change where and why certain things are prioritized. When you talk about voice still being important, I think the thing that we have to remember, and this is a shift in because of AI, and this is a shift back to voice, because voice is now the interface. We have to think of voice being the presentation layer, because what's happening now is what happens when you search for things? Are you still typing? Most people aren't typing.
Well,
Most people are just picking up their phone and being like, hey, and I can't say it. Okay, I can't give you the actual example because if I say one of the names of a sentient AI being in my fully connected home, things will start to happen in this office, and I can't risk that during this webinar. But if I were to say, hey, insert name here, do this for me, that's my voice as the interface. That is my voice. My voice is the literal channel. The devices and the presentation layers that are picking that up and listening and moving on, that's a device. That's a medium. That's a way that gets through. But if my voice, I'm the customer, and if my voice is the channel, I don't care if you email well.
Yeah. And then when you start doing this, on a regular basis at home and with your car or your fridge or whatever, you expect to be the same thing with, I mean, my fridge is connected to this computer. I mean, I don't know why, but
you're buying orange juice just because you thought about it, and that's just
we're doing camera in there. But I don't spend a ton of time looking at what's in my fridge with a camera.
But here's the thing: it's going to tattle on you. And that's what's happening. So now we all see
it's reporting to a higher being somewhere. What?
Right. But here's the interesting thing: everything in your fridge is now data.
Yeah, I guess for somebody else.
For somebody else. But the funny thing is that data that is your refrigerator now, that's going to help a brand. Let's say an orange juice brand, cut through the clutter and have an experience ready and waiting for you, talking about how you could have orange juice on subscription. I could just send you a different variety of orange juice. You're French. Maybe I'm going to give you a different type of French orange juice. I don't know if that's a thing. So don't come at me if French orange juice is not a thing, but I'm just saying. It can come at me. It can actually have those conversations with you. So the next time you're calling, the next time you are engaging with something, it all connects. It all starts to make sense because you are Dennis. You don't change because you're at your computer or you're at your home or in your car. You're Dennis. But because of the silos that you were just talking about, right? An orange juice brand treats you like you're a car, you're your desk, you're your phone, you're your refrigerator. They're not necessarily treating you like Dennis. And what's the number one thing that everyone hates when they do have a challenge and they call on the phone? That they're treating you like your refrigerator or your car. They treat you like the channel through which you had the engagement that's happening right now. They're not treating you like Dennis, who has this whole life and experience, they treat you like your car. They treat you like the channel. And I think that's a big problem. So I love that channelless is at the center of your blank page. I would argue that customer is also in the center of your blank page, which I think is a little bit of an uncomfortable spot for some folks in a truly operationally focused contact center.
No, but I mean, the customer has to be, of course. I mean, if you look at what are the most valuable thing in any enterprise, okay? Well, your customer should come first, because if you don't retain your customer, well, soon you don't have a business, okay?
Great,
So
but I'm going to ask you a question now, Dennis, because you don't want to talk about data, but you say that the customer is your most important asset. What's the manifestation of a customer within an organization? How does the customer manifest?
Well, they leave.
In data. It's data.
Oh, yeah.
All those zeros and ones are a digital manifestation of the customer. How do you know? Like, that's how you figure out who and what and why your customer is through that data.
Yeah, you can have all the data you want if you don't treat them well.
Absolutely. But how do you know how to treat them well? Like, how do you know what flow is?
You should be able to mine all of that data. I think that most enterprises are not there yet. It's
fair. That's totally fair.
You're still wishful thinking. You know, when we started our association, I mean, or partnership, let's call it whatever you want, with ServiceNow, it was really with this very simplistic idea that there was going to be, you know, a merger of sorts between the CCaaS and the CRM. And I think it's happening now. There's still a lot of problem with all the overlaps that hasn't been solved, and tug of war between the different parties. I don't know when that's going to go away, but I mean, the way we've done things, we try to eliminate most of it because we have it's in the customer, and it's in the customer of our customer best interest. But that's only with the CRM. What about the ERP? What about the you know, your HR system and so on? I mean, when an employee is calling the company, they might be calling for something that has to do with their 401k,
their benefits, yeah.
And
I want some time off, yeah.
And that's HR and so on. But it could be something completely different, and they need to talk to something in finance and so on. Why not try to resolve everything in one conversation?
Right.
And unless everything is connected and all that data that you mentioned is present, is there on me, the employee in that company, unless it's connected and available and reachable in real time, you don't get that.
Right. You bring up such an interesting point, and I love that you brought up ServiceNow, because I want to dig into that just a little bit. I think that right now the hot topic with ServiceNow, of course, is CRM, right? They've brought that conversation to the forefront. Right. What I think the interesting conversation that they've brought forward is not so much, hey, we're CRM, right? Like that's a tagline. But I think that pushed people to rethink why CRM has been painful. Because let's just be very honest about something. CRM has been painful since like the Rolodex. Like this is not like, as a technology category, this has been painful back since SFA and Salesforce automation, right? When we first decided to take those paper cards and put them into a digital format, you had a seller someplace be like, they're not spying on me. There have been enterprise groups of sellers trying to game the system since the very first time we implemented a transactional database, right? So there have been lots and lots of issues with SFA. There have been lots and lots of issues with CRM. Of course, the irony of all of those problems is that the group you just talked about, that group that's supposed to be the very center of this blank page of a new contact center, right? The customer has always been the one that lost in that war of CRM, right? Like of who owns it, who deals with it, what goes into it. The customer is always the one that's lost.
It was always about management and not about customer.
100%. And so I think the interesting shift that ServiceNow, in the shift in the conversation that ServiceNow is really starting to foster and really starting to encourage is, what if we actually refocused not even just on the customer, but actually on the R portion, like on the actual relationship of where all of these pieces and where all of these, not just the data, but the workflows connect.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's that is the point at which we start to focus on the relationship, because there are a lot of tools and systems that can focus us on the management. Right. And there are a lot of tools and systems that can even bring us the customer. It's the relationship part that requires all of these workflows and all of these points of strategy to come together. And I think that's what the really interesting part, especially for the contact center, is going to be. Because when you work in isolation or when you fight against a tool called CRM, well, the relationship becomes impossible with that customer, because you might see what they did last. You might see what their basic interests are. You might see when they last contacted the organization. You can bring that into an agent canvas. That's great. But can you set up an automated workflow that actually is in their benefit, that proactively reaches out for something based on how they sounded in their last call? Without that connection of the workflows, you can't do it.
Yeah, when you look at different definitions that ServiceNow gave of themselves over the years, they were going to be the digital transformation platform for the world. Okay, fine. Now they are the AI. I don't. Sorry, missed. I got a message on my screen that I need to do an update soon. Anyway, I hate those. So now they put the accent on AI, but I think that the best message is when they were positioning themselves as a system of action.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense, because now, when I saw them, and who am I to criticize? But when I saw them, being so happy to define themselves as a CRM, okay, I thought, okay, this is because they want to put, make it clear that they're going after the Salesforce, customers. Well, that's great, but why would you call yourself a CRM? This is so old.
Yeah. In fairness, it's just like one little bubble of their giant. If you look at everything they're capable of, I think it's one little bubble, which I think it's a much needed shift. If I'm being really honest, the CRM market needs to be shaken up. And one of my colleagues, Martin Schneider, talks about it all the time, right? Is that who's ripe for disruption and where is disruption in the CRM space really necessary? And it is necessary. But I think what you're talking about of being a system of action also goes back to something else ServiceNow often calls themselves, and I think makes it really understandable for folks who may not be in an IT ecosystem where ServiceNow is ubiquitous. Like if you're in the contact center, you're like, why do I care about ServiceNow? It's because they're the platform of platforms.
Right.
That they become that really solid architecture, that composable architecture, that platform on which all these other heavy, complex, complicated, busy, like all the other things from across the enterprise, regardless of your function, if you've got a tech stack, you can put that platform on top of this really rock solid platform. So you become the platform of platforms.
And that's why we like being the engagement layer attached to that, because it makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Connected to everything.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that, but I also think what makes it really interesting for me when I look at you and I look at ServiceNow and I kind of complete that sentence, I think there are the obvious engagement areas, and context is certainly one of them. And I mean, I think that becomes really obvious, but you brought up two really good examples, and I want to bring up a third. You brought up HR, right? If I've got a question about benefits, why can't I just pick up the phone? Right. And that goes vice versa, right? If I'm in HR, why can't I pick up the phone and just have this conversation? Right. Finance, which I think is a really, really important part of that. But again, it all clicks into that platform of platforms. But I also look at field service, right? Field service for a very long time has been such a disconnected thing. And when we think about voice as presentation layer, we tend to think about dispatch and how that dispatch center needs to have that voice activation. And then but I think about the actual field service customer and the field service technician.
Oh, absolutely.
And we often leave voice out of that because that voice is hard. We just want them to be able to text in, I'm done. And then the workflow starts from there. But to have the technician have the capability to call in and have that automated voice feature where it asks the critical questions that you need to know about your customer, and it just gives that tech a really easy conversation, and they move on to their next job.
So I give you a very, very simple, voice AI example that we're implementing. One of our customers, 22,000 store and thousands of trucks. Okay, so we are in quite a few of their call centers, and one of them is the one that you mentioned, dispatching the trucks.
Yeah.
Well, they came up with this very simplistic idea, and when you think of it, it makes so much sense. Okay, so when a truck is disabled on the side of the road, okay, they need to call. They don't have internet. They need to call. The best way is to call. Well, and when they call, it's always the same thing. I mean, it's pretty repetitive and simplistic situation. Hey, I'm on the side of the road, and I need to see, please send someone to help me, or whatever. And so now they're talking to an AI agent. Voila. Done.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they're stuck in the middle of the night, during the weekend. There's always somebody very nice taking that call.
Right.
And then starting the workflow.
And I think the important thing there is, I mean, it's great that the person's nice and it's great that it's available 24/7. But if I'm the business, what's also great is that didn't happen in isolation, where I then had to wait until the morning for a batch to pull in that data to then put it into my field service management solution, because it was voice, and voice is operated by a different department.
Real time. It's real time.
And I think that the other part of that, when I think it through, is that I think a lot of times we make it really, really hard for IT, and we make it really, really hard for our development partners to create those connected workflows, right? Because we bring in all these point solutions where it's like, well, I need something for text, and then I need something for voice, because we think about it in isolation and we think about isolated incidents. But I think when we come back to this idea of starting innovation from a blank page, of in a perfect world, if I were to define what just happened with a truck roll that had a truck breakdown, there's also an impact to my customer, because that truck breakdown happened at 5 and this repair was supposed to start maybe overnight at 7. That repair can that customer afford to have that repair not happen? Do I have to roll a different truck? Does that truck have to stop by and actually pick up different? It impacts so many different things that if you're just doing that call in isolation, if you're doing field service in isolation, and it's not connected to your customer's transactional record, it's not connected to their service record, it's not connected to everything else in your organization, the whole chain breaks down. But those are workflows.
And that's where all of that, I mean, all those different departments are connected, and they're on service now.
Right. But that's where their AI flow, wherever it's triggered. If someone's working in 3CLogic all day long, and that's the plane and that's the interface that they like to work in, they've come to be accustomed to it. Similarly, if they're in ServiceNow all day, don't swivel chair them. Put the alert right there, right? Yeah. The 3CLogic voice transcript, the alert of what has to happen after that call happens, that comes up in the workflow of ServiceNow, in the console of ServiceNow. It comes up where it's supposed to come up. It comes up as a text message. Well, the fact that someone's voice comes in as a text message, like, that shouldn't be revolutionary. That should just be how it works.
Yeah, and an incident or a case, depending on the situation, is being created automatically, and so this is where all of this gets exciting, because I mean, the ROI is pretty huge when you do it right.
Absolutely. So let's talk about AI for just a second, because I also think that, much like regular technology, capabilities across channels and that whole, I love that you talk about, like, that concept of omnichannel actually created more silos than it did break down anything across experience. But we get the sense that AI is kind of doing the same thing, because people are creating AI applications and experiments in their isolated silos. They're not thinking of it. So, like, just like engagement has to be that layer, they're thinking of AI as being something that's just going to be functionally isolated. What do you see as the big challenge with that? Like, what how do we break that cycle? But what happens if we can't?
Well, I don't know. What happens if we can't? I mean, I don't know. I hope nobody's going to get there. That clearly is not going to be a good place. But no, it really it goes back to, for most people, I mean, unless you're a very sophisticated company, this is very new. I mean,
Yeah,
especially the Gen AI part of it, and so go back to just, I mean, be careful. Don't play with it in a way which could hurt yourselves, your company, maybe your job. Just be reasonable, and frankly, it should not be hard to be reasonable, because the highest ROI is replacing boring jobs. I mean, so go for the boring, go for the repetitive,
the
because
mundane. Yeah, absolutely.
because the benefit is going to be that actually your agents are going to thank you for it. People are concerned that that's going to replace agents, and job are going to be lost. No, not really.
So let's say it out loud. I mean, because this is the thing. If I'm being super honest, Dennis, let's just say the unsaid thing out loud, which is the boring job isn't being a contact center agent. That is not the boring, mundane job. And I think a lot of people in other places in management that don't necessarily understand the contact center have made this assumption that the agent's job itself in its full totality is the boring, mundane job. No, and more no. Password resets. That's the mundane job. Like, that's the, like, you have to take that business outcome and parse it out and really be honest about it, because that agent, that voice is sometimes what the customer 100% needs. And we can't lose sight of that.
So it's not about deflection. I mean, yeah, password reset. Let's do that. Let's make sure that you're a highly paid IT,
you're empathetic human being that's sitting there willing to get yelled at. Take that off their plate.
Take it off. And most likely, I mean, we see for a lot of our customers in IT, we have quite a few that are using us in coordination with ServiceNow for their IT department. I mean, these people don't see themselves as call center employees. I mean, they're done that, and they're going to look
100%.
They're going to say, "What are you talking about?" They actually take a very, small number of calls per day.
Yeah,
and it's fine, and they still need that capability that we bring, because those calls are really, really important. They're getting to these guys; those are important calls. So they're not going to get replaced anytime soon. We're just going to make their life easier.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so wow, we've had everyone held captive here for 45 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us. G, are there any questions that you want us to tackle? Or because I could keep asking Dennis questions all day. Well, I feel like you're gossiping.
There's one that's come through, and I think
what's up?
Everyone in the audience will enjoy, which is really, and I think it goes to you, Liz, but I think Dennis, you'll have an opinion, having been, in the ecosystem for as long as you have, which is, look, there's been a lot of headlines in the States this summer, just a few, right? Take your pick, right? There's acquisitions, the likes of NICE, for example. There's mergers and acquisitions with what recently was announced this week as it pertains to Thoma Bravo's acquisition of Verint, and of course, so own Calabrio. So I think the question to you first, Liz, but then Dennis, feel free to add on, which is, what do you make of all this news, Liz? And what do you think it means?
Really interesting question. Y'all are trying to get me in trouble, though, I think, when you ask me these questions. We'll think about that later. I think that the space for the past 12 months, if we're really being honest about whether it's CCaaS, whether it's customer service, like whatever category you're going to put this technology in, it has been ripe for convergence for quite some time. There were a lot of vendors out there, and you could still look at a MarketScape and be like, who's that? Like, there are going to be names that are on there that you're like, wait, they're still, they're still here. Okay, cool. And so I think that there has consolidation has certainly been something that has been top of mind for at least, analyst folks like myself for quite some time. We've been wondering when it was going to start. We've been predicting that it was going to happen. And I think that we're seeing that role very quickly. But I think we'd be remiss in not also articulating that AI has made our space a very, very interesting space to be in. Primarily because when you ask executives, where do you feel your first application of either generative or agentic AI, where things go truly autonomous, where they reason, where they have context, where you can have those kind of self-learning, self-healing workflows put to work for a business for either an efficiency play or an effectiveness play, whichever route you want to go down, really the first place they all think of is customer service and marketing. Right. So that has put the spotlight back onto these two categories, and it's made the space hot. It's also been moving so fast. It's something that Dennis brought up earlier, right? AI has accelerated so many different points of change across these spaces that a lot of vendors in the space who were not necessarily set up to fit easily into an ecosystem, or to be able to draft off and be that layer, or to be part of that platform of platforms, they're having to acquire to meet that growing expanse and that growing need. So I think that we're seeing a little bit of all of that. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, I woke up this morning and there are at least 3 different investment firms with kind of desperate emails coming to me saying, like, how much do we have to pay you to give us insight into who should get bought next? And I'm just going to say, you're not offering me enough money. But that's aside. That's an aside. That's beside the point. $100 ain't going to cut it. But I think that we're going to see this space be, it's going to be white hot for a little while. It's in the time that the cool down happens of where we're not in the headlines and we're not making 2 billion. Like, when the acquisition prices aren't at 2x valuation and we don't see all the B's involved in that money, I think that's when the rubber's going to have to meet the road. And I think that's when the strategy, like what Dennis and I were talking about earlier, of we need that clean slate to reimagine what we're going to do with AI, not because of AI. How are we going to put voice back as that key presentation layer? How are we not going to get trapped in all of these stacks that are super complex and now we got to go on Ninja them? Because that craziness is going to become legacy in like 60 seconds. So I think that what's happening now is a whole lot of excitement. I will say to customers who hear this, don't panic. It's not a time to freak out, right? But it is a time to start asking your partners in crime within your enterprises where you're set up to create this type of customer ecosystem, right? If you are a ServiceNow shop, you should be asking about, does this integrate? Where does this come from? Where are our workflows flowing through? Hey, hey, 3CLogic told us that we could do all this stuff and we could have all these workflows carry through thanks to ServiceNow. Are we doing that? Like, have different conversations with your IT teams so that you can see where that's going. Dennis, what do you think? Dennis, you really dig these acquisition deals, don't you? You have no opinions about them. You're sitting there very nicely. That makes me very nervous.
Absolutely no opinion. I have an opinion on ServiceNow and Salesforce making that huge investment in Genesis. And the way I'm looking at it, it feels like, and I'm sorry, it's going to be a French expression again, but this.
You're French.
You know this one.
Okay.
Un mariage à trois. You know what that is, right?
Don't go there.
Well,
listen, it's to assure, it was to assure that no one entered into a mutually destructive relationship. But you know what? Here's what I will say, and I say this in total honesty. Genesis put a lot of investment up front to make a lot of partnerships work for Genesis and for their customers. And you know what? I think everyone in the market, and I think that it's funny, the CCaaS market, and you guys are included in this, right? You're a CCaaS. And I think that we all look at each other and kind of go, like, okay, cool. We're all fighting the same fight and we might be looking for the same customer, but we all bring a different flavor to it. Genesis gets the kudos for putting in that investment. And I think a lot of this and that investment back from ServiceNow and from Salesforce was a little bit of that payback of like, hey, you guys put in a lot of work to make all of these things work for a Genesis customer, which is amazing. And, I think that what it's also done, though, has really put a very interesting lens on those partnerships, because there are partnerships that require an awful lot of elbow grease and a lot of work. And you've got to really kind of hitch that up. And you're looking at your IT team and your development team to be like, hey, guys, are we ready to make this partnership work? Then there are the partnerships that just work, that have the native integrations, that have the flow throughs, who have thought of all those things. And I think those are two very different scenarios when you're looking at CCaaS tools. So when I go back to my statement of go to your CIO, right? If you're the head of service, if you're the head of field service, like whatever service you're part of, where you're having to deliver experience and deliver a service experience to an internal or external customer, go and ask the questions that Dennis was asking earlier, right? Which is, are you set up on a platform of platforms to enable that you're not this isolated silo where your workflow is just going in a circle? Does your workflow go out to ERP? Does your workflow have the capacity to go out through ServiceNow and be assisted? Does voice get to be assisted to ITSM? Does voice AI get to be assisted to field service management? Does it ask those questions? Because partnerships are great. Investments are great. Having those partnerships between a vendor and another vendor only really matter if the brand that is that mutual that has them as a customer has gone and actually put all that hard work to work.
So another thought. I mean, so I have a few thoughts. Maybe not about the mergers, but maybe about mergers to be, or where things are. Which is, voice is going to be ubiquitous. It's just, we cannot just look at voice as how does voice is going to work with CRM. That is too small. I do believe that there are a few platforms, or everybody's a platform, or nobody's a platform. There's only a few, 5 or 6 that are real platforms, but there are a few vendors, solutions out there that could use voice as their channel, and they're starting to think about, we should have our own channel. Why not? And it wasn't possible before the advent of voice AI. All of a sudden, it looks easier. It makes more sense. It's software.
It's possible.
It's possible, and
yeah,
the part is so small that it's not scary anymore.
Yeah, I love it. G left us alone.
Because I'm supervised to keep conversation and didn't want to get in the role and in the way, but we are coming up on time here, so maybe I'll just leave it with you, Liz and Dennis. Maybe some closing thoughts, and then we'll.
So if what I would encourage everyone to do is take out that blank piece of paper, right? Even if it's just an experiment, even if it's just something that you do just to refresh and recalibrate and rethink where change can manifest because of AI and because of voice, get that blank paper out, put your customer at the center of it. I think we all agree that's where the customer goes, but then start to really rethink maybe some of those underserviced points of engagement, right? If engagement is a layer, as Dennis just was describing, where does that layer extend? And where are some of those places beyond the functional walls that you're very, very used to existing within? Where can you daydream that existing layer and all of that goodness that you have reaped within the contact center, where does that go and impact? Does it impact product? Does it go and impact, other forms of supply chain? Think about those things, because that becomes your blueprint for a very different conversation with your CIO. But that becomes a very different conversation that pulls the contact center into a very, very strategic and critical role. It's not just the operational cog. It's not even just the growth center for more revenue. You're the center point for where customers' voice and where voice AI goes back into the organization. And that becomes a really exciting future.
Oh, wait. So I totally agree with you. The only thing I would add to that is the fact that try to keep it simple. Because AI can be very, very confusing. So you want AI ROI. And if you go to the CIO or your CEO with an AI project, I think he's going to be interested by AI, but it's going to be really, really interested by the ROI. So if You need to connect the two, and then you make sure that those projects are going to be successful. And after that, you can do things that are going to be more ambitious, maybe, but you start from a solid base. I mean, because the other thing is that I think everybody is learning how to use AI in their own enterprise. And now when you're telling your people in your department or whatever, this is what is going to happen, we're going to do things, you need to enroll, you need to explain, you need to...
Well, those are some good closing thoughts here, guys. Well, look, I know we're coming up at the top of the hour, so with that, we are going to close the session. Liz, it is always a pleasure to have you, right? Bringing the energy.
Thank you.
Dennis, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to let other people hear sort of your opinion, of course, from 3CLogic's perspective. For all those of you who have joined us, thank you for taking the time to do so, your busy schedules. And for those of you watching on demand, thank you for doing so as well. We will continue to have thought-provoking sessions like this one and future webinars, throughout the year and into 2026. So please keep an eye on our calendar. Feel free to register for future events. We hope to see you again. And with that, Liz, a final thank you and goodbye. And to our audience, we'll see you around. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.